I was sitting at the kitchen table when the email came through. It was a group message my mom had copied in my brother, my sister, and me. The subject line was simple: family meeting this Sunday. No context, no warmth, just the time and address, her house, and a line at the bottom that said, "We need to settle a few things once and for all." I knew what it was about. 2 weeks earlier, I'd told her, quietly, firmly, that I wasn't going to hand over the inheritance Dad had left for me. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was enough to finally pay off my mortgage, maybe even breathe a little. Dad had set it aside in a separate account before he died, his way of saying, "You've carried the load long enough." But Mom didn't see it that way. She thought it was family money. And by family, she really meant my brother, who was behind on his third failed business, and my sister, who still lived with her, unemployed, 37, and somehow always the victim. I was the stable one, the selfless one, the one who always made things work. So, naturally, they assumed I'd just do the right thing. When I didn't, my phone started lighting up. First it was my brother. "Come on, you know how much pressure I'm under." Then my sister. "You're seriously hoarding Dad's money while Mom can't even cover her property taxes?" And finally, my mom. "This is how you honor your father?" But I stayed calm. I didn't yell. I didn't explain. I just said, "This is what Dad wanted. I'm keeping it." And now, here it was, the family meeting. One long table. 4 chairs, decades of resentment, unspoken expectations, and a thick file of emotional IOUs. I parked outside their house, the same house I grew up in, and stared at the porch for a long time before I walked in. The shutters were still crooked, the welcome mat still faded from the sun. Inside, the air felt heavy, like I was stepping back into a life I'd spent years trying to outgrow. They were all already there. My brother with his arms crossed, leaning back like a CEO in his crumbling empire. My sister on her phone, not even pretending to make eye contact. And Mom, sitting at the head of the table like a judge about to hand down a sentence. No one said hello. Just the rustle of papers, a bank statement, a copy of Dad's will, a calculator. It wasn't a conversation, it was an ambush. "We thought you'd be reasonable," Mom started. "I am," I said quietly. "That's why I'm here." And for a moment, there was silence. Not peace, just the kind of silence that comes before a storm. What they didn't know was that I had spent the last week going through every memory, every holiday, every time I'd sacrificed, bent, and broken myself just to hold this family together. And something had shifted in me. I wasn't there to fight. I was there to listen, one last. But I also knew something they didn't. This wasn't just a meeting about money. This was going to be the last time I let them tell me who I was supposed to be. When people say, "She's the strong one," what they really mean is, "She'll carry it so we don't have to." I didn't ask for that role. But somewhere between my dad's cancer diagnosis and my sister dropping out of community college, I became the glue, the ride, the planner, the emotional locksmith who held all the doors closed so no one had to feel the draft of reality. I was 26 when Dad got sick. My daughter Lila was barely 2. My husband had just left, said he couldn't do the whole family man thing. He needed to find himself, which turned out to be code for chasing a yoga instructor in Flagstaff. So I moved back in with my parents. Just for a few months, I told myself. A few months turned into 3 years. I was teaching during the day, grading papers at night, and giving my dad sponge baths in between. Mom couldn't stomach the medical stuff, said she was too emotional. So I learned how to do it, all of it. Med schedules, insurance calls, oxygen tanks, hospice forms. When Dad passed, I handled the funeral, picked out the casket, paid the balance with my credit card because Mom didn't have it right now. She said she'd pay me back. She never did. I never asked. Because that's what I do, right? I handle things. Even when I didn't have much, I made sure they were okay. When my brother lost his second auto repair shop, I co-signed a loan for him, $12,000. I was making maybe $41K a year teaching. I still remember my stomach sinking as I signed the papers, but he looked so beaten down I couldn't say no. He never paid it, defaulted. My credit tanked. I couldn't even refinance my house after that. My sister, Jess, was always the wild card. Creative, that's what Mom called her. I called it irresponsible. She'd get a job at the coffee shop, quit 3 weeks later because the manager had bad vibes, lived with Mom, used her car, racked up parking tickets in my dad's name that somehow I ended up paying because they were going to suspend his old plates, and Mom was in tears. I never said no, not really. I just managed. Used to ask me why we didn't go on vacations like other families. I told her we're saving for something special. But the truth was, there was always something. A bounced check from Mom's account, a dental emergency for Jess, gas money for my brother to drive across the state and try one last business pitch. The one time I tried to take a break, I signed up for a writing workshop in Oregon, just 3 days. Mom had a mini stroke. That's what she told me over the phone. I canceled the trip, flew home, took unpaid leave, drove her to every follow-up appointment. Later, I found out it wasn't even a stroke. It was vertigo, stress-induced, probably brought on by the panic of realizing she might have to manage without me. You'd think all this would have made me bitter, but honestly, I didn't feel angry back then. I just felt tired. Because here's what no one tells you about being dependable. It's lonely. No one checks on the person who's got it all together. I was everyone's plan B, everyone's emergency contact, everyone's shoulder. But when I came home, my house was silent. My fridge was empty. My own doctor visits were 6 months overdue. I remember once I had a terrible flu, fever, chills, the whole deal. I texted my mom just asking if she could drop off some soup. She said she was busy helping Jess get ready for an audition, which turned out to be an open mic night at a wine bar. So I made my own soup, pulled myself out of bed, heated up a can, and sat on the kitchen floor crying. Not because I was sick, but because I finally realized no one was coming for me. And yet, I kept showing up. Parent-teacher conferences, PTA bake sales, covering shifts for coworkers, late nights, lesson planning, even when I couldn't keep my eyes open. Because in my world, if I didn't do it, it didn't get done. Still, I held on to that little envelope Dad left me. I didn't even open it for 2 years after he passed. And when I finally did, when I saw the small inheritance and his note scribbled on a yellow legal pad, my knees buckled. For Ellie, for everything you gave without asking. Use this for yourself. Love, Dad. That money wasn't just money. It was the only time someone in my family said, "You matter too." And that's why when they asked for it, I said no. It wasn't about the cash. It was about finally saying yes to myself. The family meeting lasted 2 hours. They threw everything they could at me. Not furniture, not fists, just words. But sometimes words land harder than anything physical ever could. My brother opened with his usual, "You know, I'm just trying to make things work. You always supported me before. What's changed?" Jess leaned in, voice syrupy with martyrdom. "We've always shared everything. Isn't that what Dad would have wanted?" And Mom, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She just looked at me with that quiet, disappointed stare that used to make me feel 12 years old again. "I don't understand you," she said, shaking her head. "We've always taken care of each other in this family. What makes you so special now?" That last part sat heavy in the room. What makes me so special? Nothing and everything. I took a breath, folded my hands in my lap. My voice, when I finally spoke, was calm, measured, the way I'd learned to talk to upset students who just needed someone to listen, not react. "I'm not asking for anything from any of you," I said. "I'm just keeping what was already mine." My brother scoffed. Jess rolled her eyes. Mom looked like I'd slapped her. "I'm not doing this to hurt anyone," I added, "but I've spent most of my life helping this family stay afloat. I've put off my own needs, my future, over and over again." Then I looked straight at Mom. And this time, I'm choosing differently. That was it. No drama, no yelling, just a full stop. They didn't know what to do with that. They tried guilt. Of course they did. "You're really going to let your brother drown in debt? Jess needs that car to get to job interviews. Your father would be ashamed of you." But I didn't move. I didn't apologize. I didn't start justifying. Because I'd realized something. I wasn't the selfish one. I was just the first to say enough. I didn't storm out. I didn't slam a door. I just stood up and said, "Thanks for inviting me," and walked to the front door. And as I was grabbing my keys from the bowl by the entryway, I heard Mom's voice behind me, smaller than I'd ever heard it. "You always made me feel like I could depend on you." I turned back. "You could," I said, "and you did." Then I left. Something changed in me that day, and not just because I said no. It was because, for the first time, I didn't feel the need to explain why I deserved peace. You know how sometimes you expect fireworks, some big sense of empowerment when you finally draw a line? That didn't happen. Instead, I felt quiet. Like slipping into a warm bath after years of cold showers. Like silence after constant noise. In the days that followed, I expected the fallout. I expected the texts, the guilt trips, the "you've changed" phone calls. And they came. My brother left a long voicemail, talking about how this family used to mean something and how I'd lost my way. Jess posted a vague quote on Facebook about snakes in the grass and greedy energy. A few cousins liked it. Mom didn't call, but she did untag me from all the old Thanksgiving photos. And still, I didn't bend. I stopped checking their updates. I stopped responding to texts that only came with $signs or obligations attached. I started spending my Saturdays alone. Not lonely, just alone. Farmer's market, library, coffee shops with a book I never finished years ago. I took the inheritance and paid off my mortgage. The first night the house was truly mine, I walked from room to room barefoot, just feeling the floor. I cried in the hallway, not because I was sad, but because, for once, no one could take it from me. It was a strange grief, though. Not just for the family I thought I had, but for the version of myself I had to give up to finally be free. The fixer, the good daughter, the reliable one. She had served me well, but she was tired. She deserved rest. And rest, I realized, is a form of power. A few weeks after the family meeting, I was staying late at school. The seniors were submitting their final essays, and as usual, I was knee-deep in red pens and half-drunk coffee. The custodial staff had already turned off half the hallway lights, but I was still sitting at my desk with a blanket over my lap and my hair pulled up with a pencil. That's when Malik knocked on the door. He wasn't one of my students anymore. I'd taught him sophomore English 3 years ago. Sharp kid, full of potential, the kind of quiet that wasn't shy, just watchful. He'd stayed behind after class more times than I could count, asking questions I could tell had very little to do with the curriculum. "Miss D, you got a second?" he asked. I smiled. "You always come in here like it's confession." He laughed, but there was something serious in his eyes. "I just wanted to say thanks. I got into Ohio State. Full ride. First in my family." I dropped my pen. "Oh my God, Malik, that's incredible." He grinned, shrugged like it was no big deal, but his hands were shaking. "Thought you should be the first to know," he said. I blinked back tears and motioned for him to sit. He did, but instead of talking about his future, he looked around my classroom. "You ever think about leaving?" he asked. "Like, just walking away from all of it?" I leaned back in my chair, surprised. "All the time," I said. "Why do you ask?" He hesitated. "I don't know. You always looked like you were carrying something heavy, but not in a bad way. More like you're the type of person people lean on." That made me pause. It reminded me of something I'd once said to my daughter when she was about 12. She'd asked why Grandma never said thank you, and I'd told her, "Some people think leaning on you is love." Malik kept going. "I used to wonder if you were tired. You didn't show it, but I could kind of feel it, you know?" I nodded slowly. "I am tired," I admitted, "but not in the way people think." Then he said something I'll never forget. "My grandma raised me. She used to say, being needed isn't the same as being loved." Took me a long time to figure out what she meant. I looked at him, really looked at him, and something cracked open. That was it. That was the truth I had been circling for months but couldn't name. I had spent my life being needed, desperately, continuously, but loved, not in a way that was free of obligation, not in a way that let me rest. And in that moment, sitting across from a young man I once taught how to analyze poetry, I realized something deeper. I had confused usefulness with worth. I'd spent so long proving my value through service that I didn't know how to just exist, without fixing, without giving, without sacrificing. I thought back to my brother's voicemail, my sister's Facebook post, my mom's silence. Not one of them had said, "I love you even if you don't give me what I want." They loved me when I complied, and now they didn't know what to do with me. Malik looked at me, thoughtful. "You okay?" I smiled, genuinely this time. "I think I am," I said, "for the first time in a long while." He stood up, dusted off his jeans, and gave me that half-shy smile he'd had since the 10th grade. "You taught me how to write," he said, "but I think you also taught me how to pay attention." I nodded. "You did the hard part." After he left, I sat there a while longer. No tears, no dramatic revelations, just stillness. I opened my email and found a message from Leela, my daughter. She was away at college, growing into herself in ways I hadn't even imagined. Her message was short. "Hey, Mom, just wanted to say I see you. I get it now. And I love you not for what you do, but because you're mine." I let that sentence settle into me like warm tea on a cold morning. Maybe the rest of the world would never see the sacrifices. Maybe they'd rewrite the narrative to make themselves feel better. But some people did see. And more importantly, I saw myself. Absolutely. Here is the final part of the story. Not just financially, emotionally. No more surprise requests from my brother. He stopped reaching out after I sent back his last message with 2 words, "Take care." Jess still posts cryptic quotes online. I muted her. Mom sent a birthday card in March, no returned address. Just a line inside that said, "I miss how things used to be." But things weren't good. They were convenient. For them. I didn't write back. Not out of spite, but because responding would have pulled me back into a role I've finally retired from. These days, my life is smaller, but it's mine. I wake up early on Saturdays and walk to the bakery down the street. They know my name now. I sit with a cinnamon roll in a book, not for grading, just for pleasure. I joined a ceramics class at the community center. Turns out I'm terrible at it, My first bowl came out lopsided, and my mug leaks from the bottom. But I keep going. No one's depending on me to be good at it, and that feels like freedom. Leela visits when she can. She calls more often now, not because she needs anything, just to talk. We laugh about how we both thought we had to be strong all the time. "I thought being your daughter meant I had to be invincible," she told me once. I said, "Funny, I thought being your mom meant I had to be too." We're learning to let each other be human. One evening in April, I got a text from an unknown number. It was from a former student, not Malik, another one, a girl who'd struggled with everything: writing, attendance, life. She said, "I'm in nursing school now. I never told you, but you're the reason I stuck it out. You saw me when I didn't know how to be seen." That night, I sat on the porch and cried. Not out of sadness, but because I finally understood. You can be meaningful without being used. You can be loved without being needed as a crutch. You can matter without bending yourself in half for everyone else's comfort. I don't think my family will ever fully understand why I said no. But it's not mine to explain anymore. That part of the story closed with a whisper, not a slam. And the new chapter? It's slow, soft, spacious. I planted tomatoes this spring. I've never had a garden before. Always told myself I didn't have the time. But time was never the problem. It was just never mine to begin with. Now when I water them in the evenings, I think about all the versions of myself I had to be to get here, and how each one did her best. I don't regret being the strong one, but I no longer wear it like armor. I wear it like memory, a reminder of who I was and who I've finally chosen to become. I didn't win by proving them wrong. I won by walking away and choosing peace over permission. And if you're reading this or listening, wondering if you're allowed to stop carrying what was never yours to begin with, let me tell you what I wish someone had told me. You are allowed to set it down. You are allowed to be free.